Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good evening, listeners. It is Tuesday, September 9th, and I am walking home after my long day of teaching. A much better day. If you remember, last week did not go so great. It felt like a little bit of an off step in the first day, but this one worked better. Or feel a few moments that I can do better at figuring out how to handle this big class. This is going to be a challenge, but overall, it's a good start. So I hope that you're doing well. Today I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about an experience I had this weekend, which leads me to a conversation. There have been a number of games in the past decade or so that have relied on computers to enhance the board game experience. We've had a couple games that used apps in different ways. There was Alchemists, which used an app with a camera feature to decide whether or not you solved a puzzle correctly. There was World of Yoho that turned your phone into a playing piece and animated some of the interactions therein. We've had games like One Night Werewolf that uses an app as a timer and a sort of game judge. We've seen some more sort of computer-based or tablet-based interactions, like the program released by Fantasy Flight for running Descent and Imperial Assault. These are more robust, full-on computer games that run the physical game for you. And then, of course, the highlight of that series is Mansions of Madness, which took a game that many people had kind of dismissed as not being fun at all and brought it to the height of popularity, at least in terms of the people who are willing to plunk down the money to play it. A delightful game. We're seeing now starting to emerge a variety of other games that are using the digital space as well. This year we're seeing a lot of press about Detective, a modern crime story, in which you can actually go to a specialized website and look up things in a database. It will also tell you can go on the web and look at things. So the game expects you to be using the internet to help solve the crimes that you're encountering. So these are all robust and interesting experiences that you're having with your phone. But they got me to thinking about the way that we've been using technology in board games for a long time. In fact, we saw a surge of technology in games that came with devices in the 70s. A lot of these are storied properties like Dark Tower and Stop Thief, things that came with a gizmo that moderated the game in some way. And of course, Restoration Games, the company founded by Rob Daviau and another guy whose name I can't remember, is built around the idea that people remember these games fondly and they want them back. And so they're remaking some of these games. They remade Stop Thief. Now they're remaking Dark Tower. Interestingly, they're not actually just remaking Dark Tower. They're making a new version of it. It's called Return to Dark Tower. So it's not a remake so much as a continuation of the story that was begun in that old game. But there's another branch of digital storytelling that I don't see getting much attention in the current board game landscape, and that would be the narrow niche of VHS board games. So I've had the delight of playing two of these games. The first one that I played was the Star Trek VHS board game, Star Trek The Next Generation, in which you play sort of low-level members of the Enterprise who have been left on board while it's in dry dock, being repaired, and an evil Klingon sneaks on and takes over the ship and commands you to do stuff. And then this weekend, the impetus for this conversation, I got to play the classic VHS board game Nightmare, in which a gatekeeper, a sort of creepy, I don't know what you call him, a creepy guy, starts toying with you. He calls you names and he makes you do stuff while you go around trying to get these keys in order to win the game. Now, I had the opportunity to play Nightmare this weekend. It was pretty fun. It takes about an hour. You run the tape, and then the gatekeeper comes in and tells you things, and then pops out again. He calls on you by the name of your character, or he calls on you by the number of your character. He calls on you by your age. So if you're the oldest one in the group, you're the old one, and so he'll call on you. The youngest one he calls on. It's hilarious and really fun, but it's a terrible game. Like, there's literally no skill at all in the game. Everything involves rolling a die, and then stuff happens to you. The only thing that involves a little bit of skill is you get a whole bunch of cards that some of the cards let you do things either when people land on your space or when certain times appear on the timer. And so if you are good at managing these big piles of cards that let you do things, then you might be able to use that skill to advance your cause a little bit. But for the most part, it's just, it tells you to do things and then you roll dice and do them. Nonetheless, it was a hoot. It was really a lot of fun. So I guess I wanted to think a little bit about why was it so fun, and what might we do what would it mean to do that kind of game now? So my first thought was, how would you just make a modern version of this same game, even using the old video? I mean, the first thing you'd want to do, if you were going to reshoot it, which I would think you would want to, is to shoot way more interventions. Dozens and dozens of them. Because the acting load, once you have the actor in makeup, is minimal to have him do 20 different versions. And then, of course, instead of using a VHS tape where it has to be the same every time, you would either use an app or use a DVD with a randomizer to pick random interventions among a whole bunch more. So the game would truly be unpredictable in terms of, as opposed to if you played Nightmare a bunch of times, you would come to learn which numbers never get called or which characters get called all the time. If you're the oldest person in your game group, you're always going to get called on, that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure that for the most part everybody got to answer at least once or twice. Because one of the things it does is it says person whose turn it is right now. And so that's one of the ways that it gets you. But it seems like you could, with modern technology, build an app or a DVD that randomized in a much more complex way, an interesting way. So that's one thing that I find interesting about the idea. But the game itself, like I said, is terrible. There's a big ring, and there's stuff that happens on the various spaces, but you roll a die and you move. And if you land on a space that does something, you do that thing. You have to go in one direction, and that's it. You really don't get any control at all. The only thing that you have any control over, I already explained. But the thing is, part of the reason it's fun is the game takes no thought. A game like this, which in the end, the last couple minutes is very high pressure, because if somebody doesn't win, then the gatekeeper wins. And so toward the end of the game, the pressure really starts to mount as in terms of the desire to finish the game. And in order to do that, you really need to not have to think too hard about what you're doing. You know, a game that requires a ton of thought is not fun to play under a ton of pressure. Or if it is, then that means part of the fun of the game is that pressure. If you're playing Galaxy Trucker with people who are in a hurry, as opposed to my children who never hurry when they play it. Or if you play Space Alert, where the CD or the DVD tells you what to do and you have to do it quickly. Or Escape, where you're rolling dice and hustling as fast as you can, but then again you have to get out of the temple before you get killed. When you're doing these things, it's really provocative in terms of trying to manage your energy and your time and succeed at doing things. A game like Nightmare, where part of the fun is being able to watch and interact with the gatekeeper, it shouldn't be a game that involves a really deep strategy or even much strategy at all. So it got me to thinking about what kinds of things can we take from other games if we were going to remake Nightmare to try to make it a better game. And I think the two mechanisms from other sort of low stakes, fast games that we don't see in Nightmare, but I think are really valuable there, would be push your luck mechanism and the Yahtzee mechanism. So a Yahtzee mechanism is basically the one that gets used for many dice games, including Rattlebox Games' own Cromlech, in which you roll your dice 3 times. And there are some set of rules about whether you can keep or have to re-roll parts or some of those groups. But then after the 3 rolls, then you're done and you have to take what's there if you chose to use all 3 rolls. So King of Tokyo does this, Yahtzee does this. A number of other games I've played that use dice have some variation of what we'll call the Yahtzee mechanism. It'd be interesting to see how that would work in a game like Nightmare. The problem, of course, would be the player turn takes much longer then. There's a lot more decisions to make. So the motivation to go fast is removed a bit, but also the effectiveness of building a game that needs fast turns is reduced some. So then perhaps there could be a push your luck element as well. What if everybody got to do, you could either roll dice or take your bonus, and you do one of those 2 on your turn. You roll dice or you take a bonus. If you roll dice, then whatever you get, you arrange into how you want to do it and get ready for your next turn. If you take your bonus, then you're going to collect things based on the dice and then you pick them all up. So each turn goes relatively quickly because people are just doing one of the 2 things. They're rolling dice or they're taking their bonus. And when you roll your dice, if you get, say, an X on one of the dice, or then that locks the die or whatever, however you want to do it, there has to be some mechanism that hurts you for the push your luck. Then that would be the element that gets it. One thing could be just that you have to lock 1 die every roll. You can lock more if you want, you can be done if you want, but you have to lock 1 die every roll. And there could be some dice that are bad, or some faces on the dice that are bad. But that would mean, so everybody gets to take the turn, but you all have your own dice, and you're ready to go when it comes around to you. So the turns can go really fast. You say roll, you roll. You say, I'm rolling, and then you roll. Next person says, I'm rolling, then you roll. And then when it says stop, everybody stops. And it says person whose turn is next, or whatever. And it seems like there's some potential there for a benefit. So, I did want to also remember that, we're seeing this kind of, the place where we're seeing this kind of interaction, I think most strongly now, is in the other place where you play timed games, and that's in escape room games, either games that you play in your house or games that you go somewhere and pay money to play. Either way, these escape room games tend to have a timer that you're using, and then they also tend to have interactions with some sort of game governor. It could be like a moderator who's watching you and talks to you occasionally. It could be a recording. A couple escape rooms I've done have a kind of creepy recording that plays occasionally to give you clues or taunt you or whatever, right? That is very much in the spirit of what Nightmare did. The other kind of game that I would point to, I already mentioned some, are these real-time games that have some sort of component The most obvious is Escape from the Curse of the Temple, which features a soundtrack and a timer, and so as you're playing, you have to do something within the amount of time it takes in order to not get killed by or not die from the timer running out. But it seems to me like there's a lot of room, particularly in the face intervention idea. I was thinking about what are some themes you could use. One theme that came to mind that I would really like to do would be something like the role-playing game Paranoia. If you haven't played Paranoia, it's a game where you all play clones in a sort of post-human cyber world where all the humans who are alive, they live in service of this giant machine, which pretends to be in service of people, but is in fact quite capricious and mean. And the rule is that you have to do whatever the machine tells you to do, and it often tells you to do shockingly dangerous things, and if you fail, then you die. The idea is you're a clone, so then your brain gets booted back into the next clone. You have 7 clones before you die. So there's a kind of limited lifespan there. But then everybody's also part of a secret society, and it's illegal to be part of secret societies. So there's some amusing interplay there. It seems like Paranoia would be a great theme for this. You could also be spies or people trapped by a mastermind, sort of thinking about the movie Saw or something. Seems like there's a lot to do there. Well, I think that's about it for me. Thanks for listening. Pop over to Boardgame Geek Guild 3269 and let me know what you thought. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.